On my very first day at university, I experienced something that completely changed my life. It all started with a simple prank, one that left me embarrassed in front of an entire lecture hall. And yet, that moment became the beginning of something I never could have expected. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I had carefully picked out my clothes the night before, hoping they would make me look confident, even though deep down I was nervous. With my new backpack on my shoulders and my heart racing, I stepped outside, ready to face what felt like the first day of a completely new life. When I arrived at campus, I was overwhelmed. The university was buzzing with students, some walking, in groups, laughing loudly as if they'd known each other for years, others rushing between buildings as if they already knew exactly where to go. I, on the other hand, felt like a stranger wandering in an unfamiliar city. Finally, I found the lecture hall for my very first class. It was huge, filled with students already chatting and claiming their seats. I hesitated for a moment before choosing a spot in the middle row, quietly setting down my notebook, trying not to draw attention to myself. A few minutes later, a guy slid into the seat next to me. He had a confident smile, the kind of person who seemed instantly comfortable anywhere. He turned to me and said, "First day here, huh?" I nodded quickly, and he grinned. "Don't worry. You'll get used to it. I'm Ryan, by the way." He started talking to me casually about professors, the campus, and student life. His tone was so friendly that I felt relieved. Maybe I had just made my first real friend in college. But then, Ryan leaned closer and whispered, almost conspiratorially, "By the way, there's this tradition here." I frowned, curious, and he continued, "Every new student has to stand up and introduce themselves to the whole class before the professor starts. If you don't do it, people might think you're weird, or that you don't want to fit in." My stomach dropped. I had never heard of such a thing, but his serious expression made me doubt myself. What if it was true? What if everyone was expecting me to do it? The last thing I wanted was to look like an outsider on my very first day. I hesitated, glancing around the room. A few students were laughing among themselves. Were they waiting for me to stand? Was this some kind of unspoken rule? Ryan gave me a reassuring nod. "Trust me, man. Do it now before the professor walks in. Everyone respects the new student who takes the first step." My palms were sweaty. My heart was pounding so loudly that I could hear it in my ears. Before I could second-guess myself, I pushed back my chair and stood up. The room fell silent. Dozens of heads turned toward me. I felt every pair of eyes locked onto my face, waiting. I swallowed hard, cleared my throat, and in a shaky voice began, Hi everyone. My name is Daniel, and this is my first day here." The moment the words left my mouth, I realized how shaky my voice sounded. My hands were trembling, but I forced a nervous smile, trying to look composed. The silence in the lecture hall felt heavy. Some students stared blankly, others exchanged confused looks. For a split second, I thought maybe Ryan was right. Maybe this was an actual tradition, and everyone was just waiting for me to continue. So I did. "I'm majoring in computer science and, I'm really looking forward to meeting new people." I tried to speak confidently, but the atmosphere was strange. There was no polite clapping, no welcoming smiles, just awkward silence, broken only by a few muffled chuckles from the back. And then I heard it. Ryan, the guy who had just convinced me to do this, burst out laughing, loud, uncontrollable laughter that echoed through the hall. His shoulders shook as he leaned forward, covering his mouth, but failing miserably to hide it. That's when it hit me. There was no tradition, no expectation, nothing. It had been a prank. The professor, who had just entered the room, paused, mid-step, and frowned. "Excuse me, what exactly is going on here?" he asked, his voice sharp but calm. I froze. My face felt like it was on fire. All the students were staring at me, some with pity, others with amusement. I wanted to disappear, to sink into the floor and never be seen again. I, uh, sorry, I stammered, quickly sitting back down. My chair screeched loudly against the floor, making the moment even more humiliating. Ryan was still laughing, though he tried to disguise it with a cough when the professor shot him a glare. A few other students chuckled quietly, whispering to each other. My chest tightened. I had never felt so exposed in my life. The professor shook his head and continued with the lecture, but I couldn't focus on a single word he said. My mind was replaying the moment again and again. The silence, the stares, Ryan's laughter. My thoughts were loud enough to drown out everything else. But something unexpected happened after class ended. As students started packing their bags, a girl sitting 2 rows behind me leaned over and whispered, "Hey, don't let it get to you. He does that kind of thing to everyone." I blinked, surprised. Everyone? Did Ryan have a reputation for this? Before I could even respond, another guy came up to me and said, "Man, that was brutal, but honestly, you handled it better than most people would have." It caught me off guard. Instead of ridicule, I was getting sympathy, maybe even respect. Ryan walked past me on his way out, smirking as if he had just won some sort of game. "Good job, rookie," he muttered under his breath, still amused by my embarrassment. I clenched my fists, unsure if I should confront him or just let it go. Part of me wanted to yell at him, to ask why he would humiliate someone on their very first day. But another part of me felt strangely curious. Was this how things worked here? Was this some twisted way of testing newcomers? As I walked out of the lecture hall, I could feel eyes still following me. Some were sympathetic, some entertained. But either way, I was no longer invisible. People knew who I was now, and little did I know that embarrassing prank was just the beginning of something much bigger. As I walked out of that lecture hall, I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire reputation had already been decided. On the very first day, part of me wanted to crawl into a hole and never show my face again. But at the same time, something inside me refused to let Ryan have the last laugh. Over the next few days, I noticed how people started treating me differently. Some students smiled at me in the cafeteria, others gave me nods of recognition in the hallways. At first, I thought they were mocking me, but slowly, I realized it wasn't like that at all. The girl who had whispered to me during class, her name was Emily, sat next to me the following week. She said, "You know, it actually took guts to stand up like that. Most people would have frozen." Her words surprised me. I had been replaying the humiliation in my head, but from her perspective, it looked like confidence. Even a couple of guys from the back row started joking around with me in a friendly way, saying, "Hey, it's the tradition guy." But instead of laughing at me, they invited me to sit with them during breaks. Somehow, my embarrassment had turned me into someone people remembered and even respected. Ryan, of course, didn't stop. He tried pulling smaller pranks here and there, making sarcastic comments whenever he saw me. At first, it got under my skin. But then one day, I decided to turn the tables. During a later lecture, I whispered to a few students around me, telling them to watch what would happen. When Ryan walked in, I called out loudly, "Hey everyone, this is Ryan. He's the guy who makes sure new students feel extra welcome with his special traditions." The room erupted in laughter. Ryan's face turned red as half the class turned to look at him, some already knowing what I meant. He tried to play it off with a grin, but it was clear I'd struck a nerve. That moment changed everything. From then on, Ryan stopped bothering me. He still had his friends, still pulled his pranks, but he left me alone. And as for me, I wasn't the embarrassed kid anymore. I was the guy who had stood up, taken the hit, and somehow turned it into something positive. Looking back now, I realized that pranks shaped my entire university experience. It forced me to face humiliation head-on, to find my confidence in the middle of laughter and stares. What I thought was the worst moment of my life ended up being the very thing that pushed me to grow. On my first day, I thought Ryan had ruined me. But in reality, that prank was the spark that helped me find my place. And from that day forward, my life at university was never the same again. And so, our story comes to an end today. But in the world of Max fables, every tale carries a lesson and leaves an impact. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you won't miss our upcoming tales. Here, where stories come to life.